What's a dictator? If you're the leader of the United States, your number one goal is to keep Russia, the world's largest landmass with some of the world's deepest energy reserves, from allying with China. And that in charge of our country just allowed that to happen. Would you kill Putin if you could? I don't even know what you mean by legal. It's wrong.
Lawful.
What law? Are there international policemen? Who are they? What are you even talking about?
Was it wrong for America to use atomic bombs in
Absolutely.
World War II?
One of us likes dictators.
No, you did.
Yeah.
You did.
I didn't tweet out, "I love you, Vladimir Putin."
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. We are back with part 2 of the Piers Morgan and Tucker Carlson debate. Now, this is a fascinating back and forth to watch because these are two guys who are around a similar age, who have spent their entire career in media and have both eventually come to this place where they're disenfranchised by mainstream media and have gone out on their own, but also have two very, very different worldviews, and particularly different when it comes to looking at history and how it's shaped our current world. And also, just watch how throughout this, Piers Morgan can't help himself but to go from the interviewee to the interviewer. I mean, he can't handle the cross-examination, so he just has to revert to shotgunning questions. But the theme of the interview and the narrative of the interview is Tucker Carlson just continually calling Piers Morgan out on his moral inconsistency, particularly when it comes to what a dictator is. And the first few minutes really set the stage for that. So without further ado, let's get into it.
There's no doubt that on the Russian side, they believe they were provoked into doing this. I know that you have sympathy with that view. There's also no doubt from the Ukrainian side that they believe since the 90s they've been this sovereign democratic country, albeit not perfect. You think deeply flawed. I think they've been imperfect, trying to improve. And Zelensky has actually, I think, been a force for good, not bad. But ultimately, what's happened now is that you have a situation where, as Donald Trump told me recently, it's just the mowing fields now, where you have thousands of young men being killed, often on a daily basis on both sides. And no one's winning this war, it seems to me. And if anyone is going to win it, it's likely to be Russia, not Ukraine. And then what happens? And that concerns me enormously. If the West allows Putin to just take the land he's taken, what guarantee do we have he won't try and take the rest of Ukraine? He took Crimea. He's back for more. I think he wants the whole of Ukraine. I think he won't stop there if he's allowed to get it. I think he's a pretty ruthless, evil Russian dictator.
How are we defining, just to find the term so we can follow the same term? What's a dictator?
A dictator to me is somebody, well, I would start by saying you have no respect for democratic norms, a free and fair election.
So like an unelected leader would be a dictator?
Well, you wouldn't argue that Putin, for example, has free and fair elections.
No, I've never, I'm not that interested actually.
Are you not?
Not really, it's not my country. I'm interested in my leaders, whether, they have the consent of their people. It's not of great interest to me. Whether, I do think Putin's like way more popular than, Joe Biden.
To his people.
Yes, more popular in Russia than Biden was ever popular.
I wouldn't dispute that.
But
why are you so against Zelensky?
No, I'm just trying to understand when you dismiss Putin as a dictator, which totally fair, I guess, but I'm just trying to understand what you mean by dictator. So the first criterion for dictatorship is that you're not elected. And what else? Because Zelensky's obviously not elected either.
Yeah,
So I'm just trying to kind of figure out what you're talking about.
Well, your comparison with Zelensky and Putin over the last 2 years, I found baffling, because you seem to think there's some moral equivalence between the two. And Zelensky hasn't illegally invaded another country. Do you not have a problem with what Putin's done?
Hold on. I just want to know what a dictator is. I just want to know. Maybe he's a better guy than Putin or whatever, and you could say some things about one or not the other. But like, if we're just going to define dictator, the first feature of a dictator is he's not elected. So Zelensky's not elected. He's also, he's banned a religious denomination. He's murdered his political opponents. He has banned a language group. Those all seem like features of dictatorship to me. Now, he has the support of the British intelligence agencies. That doesn't mean he's not a dictator, though. That sounds like a dictator. I mean, if I just gave you a piece of paper and I'm like, here are some qualities of a European leader, you would say, well, that guy, that's not legitimate. That guy's a dictator. I can't support that. But his name's Zelensky, and he was once a comedian, and he does my show, so he's not a dictator. I think it's a dictator.
Well, I would argue that if you look at the history of Ukraine since the 90s, since it became a for want of a better phrase, democratic country, as they would say. Well, I mean, by the same criteria you support Putin being popular in his country, I think just under 90% of Ukrainians voted for it. You wouldn't dispute that.
Well, first of all, the country had a coup sponsored by the United States government, the CIA, in 2014. So everything that happened subsequent to that, I don't think we could call part of the democratic process. But just Zelensky personally is not elected. He's not an elected leader. He rules by force. There's no election that gives him legitimacy. So that's not a defense of Putin. It's merely an attack on the idea that Putin's the only dictator in this contest. How is Zelensky not a dictator?
Do you think Putin's a dictator?
I guess, yeah. I mean, if I stand up outside the Kremlin and say, down with Vladimir Putin, I'm probably in trouble. That's why I don't live in Russia.
Right.
Okay, so this gets really funny towards the end when Tucker Carlson just won't stop jabbing Piers Morgan about this exact topic and his love for Zelensky. And I mean, rightfully so, because if Piers Morgan just had have said he doesn't like Putin because Putin invaded Ukraine, then sure, that would be a better argument. But he has constantly said that he doesn't like Putin because Putin is a dictator. And this is where the double standard is just so glaring. I mean, Zelensky is also a dictator. I mean, he declared martial law, which in wartime, I mean, that's fair enough. But also, he suspended 11 political parties because they were pro-Russian.
Призупиняється будь-яка діяльність низки політичних партій на час воєнного стану, а саме опозиційна платформа «За життя», партія «Шарія», наші, опозиційний блок, ліва опозиція, Союз лівих сил, держава, Прогресивно-соціалістична партія України, Соціалістична партія України, партія соціаліст, блок Володимира.
In 2021, before the war, he actually passed a law giving the government the ability to block media outlets that weren't acting in the interests of Ukraine. And they've also been kidnapping people in the street and dragging them off to the front lines of war to die. I mean, we've all seen the footage. So if you want to call Putin a dictator, then fair enough. But I mean, keep that same energy for Zelensky. Let's move on to the bit where they talk about the current alliances throughout the world.
But why are you not answering my question?
What would I do if I were Trump right now?
No. Once he invaded Putin, what do you let him take?
I'd call Putin, let him take. I would say, at that
let him
point,
take.
To what extent can you clean it up? You call Putin and you say, all right, this happened. First thing we're going to do is recognize it's not in our interest, your interest, the world's interest to have NATO missiles on your border. We don't want that. There's no reason to want that because we don't want to drive you into the arms of China. You are really part of Europe, and you should be part of the West, because the West is a Christian world that has a lot in common.
And what if he says
culturally, religiously, linguistically, historically, and we want to be a bloc against the rising.
And he
East,
says, you know,
obviously.
And he says, actually, I want Ukraine.
If you're the leader of the United States, your number one goal is to keep Russia, the world's largest landmass with some of the world's deepest energy reserves, from allying with China, which has too many people, not enough land, and not enough energy. So if they get together, they create a bloc that is bigger than you economically and militarily. So you cannot let that happen. That's number one goal. You cannot let that happen. And that retard in charge of our country just allowed that to happen because he hates the United States and acted against its interests consistently from day one. 2020 to January 20th, 2025 when he left, thank God. So that's the goal. Do not allow, to the extent you can control it, do not allow Russia to align meaningfully with China. They have much more in common with us. They're part of Europe. You guys don't want to admit that, but they are.
I don't be pedantic. But
You're not being pedantic.
What do you let Putin take?
I don't care. What I care about...
You don't care?
Well, I care, but what I care about is the balance of power in the world. And if the West finds itself in a place where it's got a much smaller collective economy and a much less powerful collective military than the East, then we're in serious trouble. There's no balance in the world. The Chinese are in charge of everything. And so you can't let that happen.
But if you roll over and you let Putin take what he wants...
Roll over. It's all this like dick measuring contest.
Let me just respond.
Roll over.
Let me just respond. If you roll over and you let him take what he wants in Ukraine, why should China not go and take what they want in Taiwan, for example? They would just take...
Well, they are going to take what they want in Taiwan.
I'm not sure they will, especially with Trump as president.
It's part of China.
I don't think they will.
Okay. Why do we get to dictate what China does with Taiwan? Like, there's spheres of
You'd be
influence.
happy for them to take back Taiwan?
Of course I'm not happy. I'm not happy with any conflict ever. I hate violence. I'm a Christian. I'm just saying that great countries have spheres of influence. So Saudi Arabia, where we are now, everyone's like, oh, the Saudis are interfering in Yemen. Well, Yemen's right there. It's in their world. Like, they have an absolute interest in making sure that like nothing crazy goes on in Yemen. We have the same interest in Mexico and in Canada. And we have some crazy cross-dressing prime minister in Canada, so we kick them out because they're on our border. That's what great powers do. That's what they've always done. That's what they always will do. So it's totally fair for us to recognize that the countries around Russia, no, we shouldn't be invading or torturing them or oppressing them, of course. But that's their sphere. And big picture, holy smokes, you do not want the two largest powers in the world, apart from the United States, to get together and align against us.
So completely 100% agree with Tucker there. I mean, it is just orders of magnitude more consequential for the West to have these giant global superpowers partnering up, as we are seeing with the BRICS alliance. I mean, this is much more important than the sovereignty of a democracy like Ukraine that's not actually a democracy. I mean, the US is bankrupting itself with all of these foreign wars, and if they were to lose their position as the global reserve currency, or even partially lose their position, it would be economically devastating for them. Just imagine all of those US dollars that are circulating around the world and being traded coming back to the US. Imagine the inflation that would cause. Plus, when you just look at it, Russia and China both have these issues in their sphere of influence. Russia's obviously being Ukraine and China's being Taiwan. So these are both issues that the USA want to have a hand in. So the incentive for Russia and China to be partnering up is massive. So if you're somebody who would like to see America and the collective West, the Christian countries, if you will, remain the global superpower of the world, as I would, despite our differences, then all of these wars are actually the worst thing for achieving that end.
Would you kill Putin if you could?
Would I? Not personally, no.
But do you think it should be the policy of the UK government, the US government, because it is now the policy to kill Putin?
No, I would prefer the people of Russia to vote him out. But I also feel the same way about Netanyahu and the people in Israel.
So you're not calling for the assassination of Netanyahu or Putin?
No.
No. Do you think that if Putin were to leave, either by force or choice, that Russia would have a more pro-Western leader after?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
No. Highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely. I think that's a fair assessment. Then why would you want, since there's no evidence that the majority of Russians don't want Putin, there's overwhelming evidence that they do want Putin, so he appears to be the choice of his own country, which you may not like or whatever, but it seems true. And he's the most pro-Western leader we're likely to get in our lifetimes, then why are we against Putin exactly?
Because I don't believe him in the way that you seem to.
I don't believe anybody.
That he has this very well-intentioned, perfectly reasonable, understandable reason why he had to illegally invade a democratic country and take a third of its people, take a third of its land and people. And you think that's fine. And I'm saying
it's hilarious when you make reference to what's legal in the middle of a war.
It's illegal.
When your country and mine blew up Nord Stream and destroyed the Western European economy, was that legal?
You're talking to the editor of the paper that opposed the illegal invasion of Iraq. You supported that.
Well, I supported the invasion of Iraq.
That was illegal too.
Apologized for 22 years, but I wanted to.
Do you accept that was illegal?
I don't even know what that means.
Breaking the law.
What law?
Against international law.
Who makes international law?
Well, the international community.
Oh, the international community. What do they mean?
Do you not think there's anything like? You don't believe in international law?
I don't even know what that means. Who is the international community?
Is
Iran in the international community?
So you think any invasion of a sovereign democracy
not at all
can be legal?
I don't even know what you mean by legal. It's wrong.
Lawful.
What law? Are there international policemen? Who are they? What are you even talking about?
Well, you don't think they're international laws?
No, I think they're moral laws, and that's what I care about. Certain things are wrong, regardless of what the leadership of any country says.
You don't believe that. You believe there are actual laws, too.
Not international laws. There are no international laws.
Really?
Are there international police?
You don't believe in the
Are there international courts?
You don't believe in the... Yes, there are international courts.
Really? So who's punished in international
by the way,
other than Milosevic?
Do you believe
who's
in
punished?
Do you believe in the Geneva Convention or not?
I believe in the ideas behind the Geneva Convention, absolutely. But it's universally disregarded, including by your country, which I think has bioweapons, by the way. You should get on that, find out. Those are prohibited, but I think you guys have them. You're in violation.
Well, if that turns out to be true, I would be violently opposed to that.
But you know that it is true.
I don't, actually.
I think you should find out.
I'll look into it.
I mean, there are biolabs in Ukraine. What are biolabs doing in Ukraine, do you think? Are you comfortable with that?
No, it wouldn't be if they're there.
But you said Zelensky was a fabulous leader. Why would he have biolabs?
I like him personally.
The dictator with bioweapons. I'm not into it. I'm sorry. I guess that it's against international law, so I'm opposed. No, look, I'm just saying international law is a theoretical concept. and it's literally theoretical because it's not enforceable, and we know that because it's not enforced. So what matters is what's the interest of your country and what's right and wrong. And I'm a Christian, so that's like pretty clear for me. All this shit is wrong. It's completely wrong. It's wrong to send cluster bombs to Ukraine, which you supported. I'm totally opposed to that. Cluster bombs to kill more kids? Like, why? That's wrong. I don't care if international law says it's wrong.
So it's a really interesting back and forth here, and it definitely does highlight the profound differences in these two competing philosophies. Piers Morgan, I think, can be pretty accurately described as the typical sort of boomer, classical liberal that has really bought in to the narrative of the post-World War II liberal order. He thinks that World War II was a great victory for the West, that NATO and the international community is a force for good, that Putin is just inherently bad because he invaded Ukraine and he wants to take over the world and whatever else, and that the West must defeat him just like we defeated the Nazis, etc., etc. Whereas Tucker is far, far more skeptical of terms like the international community and international laws, because he looks at it more objectively and just looks at the actual rules of the game. And he kind of realizes that the rules are written by the victors and the rules are written by those with the most power. And there's just a shitload of hypocrisy everywhere you look. So to sit there and act like there's some benevolent international community or there's some international rules and laws that are governed by what is objectively good is just a fantasy. So now on to the next part about World War II again, which is a topic that actually has me still personally conflicted.
Wrong. That's
Was it wrong for America to use atomic bombs in World War II?
Absolutely.
Really?
And I don't, to use nuclear weapons?
Yeah.
Yes.
To end the war?
Of course.
To save many hundreds of thousands more people dying? That's what happened.
I don't, you know, this is
it not
what
morally-
we refer to in the business as a theoretical assertion.
Not really. Everyone is.
Well, it's literally theoretical.
Whether
yes.
you agree or don't agree with the use of nuclear weapons, nobody disputes the fact that it brought an end to a war which, had it been allowed to carry on for another 6 months to a year, would have
Why Nagasaki?
killed many more people.
Why drop it on Japan's Christian population? Is there some reason Hiroshima wasn't enough? No, because they wanted to test a different variety of atomic weapon. So, like, I'm against that. I'm against killing civilians. I'm against firebombing cities. I'm against bioweapons. I'm against chemical weapons.
What weapons do you support?
I guess conventional weapons. You know,
Well, how big a bomb do you support?
Look, if you're intentionally killing civilians,
Isn't it a question of just of scale? I mean,
to some extent it is, yeah.
if you believe in
Yeah.
a big bomb and it kills 500 people, but you don't agree with one that kills 1,000, what's the difference ideologically?
It depends who they are. I mean, I think you can say, I mean, there are...
So after Pearl Harbor, you think it was wrong with the Japanese refusing to surrender, vowing to kill as many people as they possibly could,
not.
that America decided to use its two most powerful weapons to bring an end to the war.
Well, that's one way to put it.
I would say it's more morally justified what America did than what the British did, for example, in carpet bombing Dresden. Actually,
Yeah.
I
Well,
think there was more justification because they were trying to bring an end to the war as quickly as they could to avoid potentially millions more people dying.
You know, it's no defense of Imperial Japan or Pearl Harbor or Franklin Roosevelt for allowing Pearl Harbor, which he did. It's not a defense of any of that to say, if you're intentionally killing civilians, you probably shouldn't beat your chest and brag about it. You know, maybe you can make the
I agree with that.
Maybe you make the case that we had to do it or whatever, but you should.
I agree.
You should weep, and that's evil, and you should just say it's evil. And I know it's like really threatening to
Is it evil, though?
Ben Shapiro to say that or whatever, but
Is it evil?
to kill civilians on purpose, yeah, it is. I think it is.
Really?
Kids and children. Well, how is it not, actually?
In a war?
Well, you can call it whatever you want. How is it right to kill women and children?
I didn't say, well, because I think there is a moral right behind you if you are literally...
To kill women and children?
If
Really?
there's a world war that threatens the
Call it
entire...
whatever you
If it threatens the entire world, yes.
Some people killed your kids like your 8-year-old? Like,
Well, obviously,
how
your
is
own
that
children, of
morally
course.
justifiable?
Well, because actually you have to... Well, by your criteria...
It's disgusting.
Okay, it's nothing's... So no war is morally justified.
I mean, I think it's pretty hard to justify. I mean, yeah, I'm
Any
sure.
war.
You know, a pure defensive action, sure. But all I'm saying, look, it's all ugly. It's all hard to stomach. I've actually seen some of it up close. It's super ugly.
You can say that. You can say you hate it.
May I finish?
The fact you quibble with it being morally justified.
To intentionally kill non-combatants, women and children, I think we can say that's wrong. In fact, I thought that was the thing we were fighting against. And censorship and dictatorship, people ruling without being elected, people using force to get their will. Like, I thought that was the whole thing we were fighting against. So how about we don't become that? And I'm just saying all kinds of decisions are made under duress. I have made decisions under duress, foolishly, that I'm ashamed of, including supporting the Iraq War. But why are we defending it? I just don't understand that. And we're defending it, of course, because we're still doing it. And a lot of people are getting rich, and a lot of people find meaning in their otherwise barren lives. Rather than like raising decent children, having a productive life, making something, they exist to destroy. I just think that's evil.
But you think no military action is morally justifiable then?
I didn't say that.
But are you implying that?
I'm not implying it. I never imply anything. I just say things.
It's the deaths of any
Implying
innocent
things
people.
is for girls. I'm just telling you what I think.
If you kill any innocent people, civilians, in a war, you think it's all morally lacking in justification? Because I would argue against that.
Right. You're arguing against a construct that you created in order to argue against.
Not really.
I'm being super straightforward. If you're
Is there any form of warfare that's morally justified? Go on.
Let me finish. I'm saying when you intentionally kill women and children, when you wage war through fear by murdering the civilian population, I don't think that's a good thing. And I don't think you should be defending it. And I don't know why it's such a threat to say that out loud. If you're firebombing someone's city, as we did Tokyo, as you guys did Dresden, and a lot of other cities, by the way, in both of those countries, if you're dropping atomic weapons in the middle of town on a Catholic church, I don't know why you have to look back 80 years later and be like, that was a great thing. It wasn't a great thing. It was a shameful thing. And we should be better than that because we're not savages. Because we're Christians.
But I don't agree with you. I don't agree with it.
Okay, apparently you don't.
I don't.
You said right in the camera it's okay to kill 8-year-olds because it's war.
No,
it's not okay to kill 8-year-olds.
I didn't say anything is okay. What I said is morally justified. Because when you have an enemy that is prepared to put 6 million Jews into gas chambers and murder 6 million more people, they are prepared to do anything. And you have to stop them. And then any response you give to me is morally justified.
Any response?
Well, pretty much. If you're taking the war to them to try and end the war and trying to defeat a nihilistic group like the Nazis, yes, it's morally
nihilistic. Says the guy who's defending the murder of 8-year-olds. They're nihilistic.
I'm not defending the murder of any 8-year-olds.
What you're doing is expressing a species of nihilism. The whole point is we are better than you because we have limits. There's some things I'm not going to rape your wife. I'm just not.
How do you stop?
Well, hold on, let me finish.
Okay.
I am not going to behave like an animal. You are. That's why we're at war. You bombed preemptively my Pacific Fleet in Pearl Harbor. We weren't even at war. Why'd you do that? That's outrageous. We're going to punish you for doing it. I get it. But we're not like
Not punish, defend.
Of course, not defending. There was no threat of invasion. If you're the United States, I mean, you live in a tiny island nation. I think there was a real
Japanese
threat.
attacked Pearl Harbor. That is a form of invasion, isn't it?
It was not an invasion. No. It was an attack.
It's a mass attack on
I'm not defending
America.
Pearl Harbor. I don't think Roosevelt should have let it happen, which he did.
But once it happened, what do you do?
You attack them back. I get it.
You agree?
Okay, but hold on. There are finer distinctions here.
Not really. You'd attack them back.
Let me finish my fucking sentence.
Was it morally defensible to attack them back?
Stop. Okay. Yes, it was morally defensible to attack them back.
Thank you. Thank you. You agree with me?
But it depends what attack
You agree
means.
with me? You didn't qualify it.
Like this?
You didn't qualify it.
You did like crazy. You're like,
you didn't qualify it.
You say it's okay to molest children. Why do you say that? You're like, I didn't say that. No, you just said it's okay to molest children. Now, why would you be in favor of child molestation?
Nobody's talked about molesting children.
That's what you
You just said it was morally justified for America
to. It's like hilarious.
America, you said
like
America attacking after Pearl Harbor.
People on, they end the interview and they're like, what just happened?
Actually, you'll be saying that.
He just told me what I believe, and then he attacked me for believing it. It's so hilarious. I love that. It's like a species of masturbation. Like, you don't need another person present.
Listen, not masturbation. It's making love to someone. It's making love to someone you love.
So I always find these World War II debates about the West's role in World War II very fascinating, but also very personally conflicting. And here's why. It's because some of the things that happened in World War II that the West was responsible for, such as the alliance with the Soviets, Dresden and the rape of Germany, the horrendous things that they did to the German civilians during peacetime, the internment camps that were set up, the atomic bombings of Japan, as well as the current state of the West. I mean, it's hard to look at those things and be filled with pride. However, I do think that the Western world in its best form is definitely a force for good. I mean, you look at the legacy of Christianity, the rule of law, the great societies built, the pioneering in exploration, the establishment of human rights, the idea that the individual is inherently valuable, and the list goes on and on. So then with that, the question becomes, what story do we tell ourselves? Because to sit here and whip ourselves and to act like we've done so many terrible things and that our history and our legacy is all bad doesn't fill anybody with pride. And that sort of narrative is actually extremely corrosive. And this is why the woke left and their whole revisionist history about slavery and colonialism is not only wrong, it's extremely damaging and definitely should be resisted, even though it's different to what we're talking about in this video. But at the same time, we don't want to put our fingers in our ears. We want to be able to learn from the bad things that we've done in the past, and to be sure that we are in fact aiming toward the good and that our leaders are accountable whilst not being in a state of constant self-flagellation. So let me know what you guys think. I mean, maybe you can provide me with some insight below as to this conundrum. So on to the last bit now, which is kind of funny, a lighter note, where Tucker is essentially just picking on Piers about his love and admiration for Zelensky.
Look, fundamentally, we're not a million miles apart, and neither of us like war. Nobody who likes war should ever.
One of us likes dictators.
No, you do.
Yeah,
you do.
I didn't tweet out, "I love you, Vladimir Putin."
You didn't need to.
You look great.
You said it in your eyes. You said it in your eyes.
Great. But I didn't say it on Twitter.
You should have. You know what? You should have been on Twitter. You just seen everyone thought you did.
Oh, I didn't. I don't give a shit what people think, but I didn't tweet, "Vladimir Putin, you're fabulous. You're fabulous."
You didn't need to.
I didn't need to.
Body language said it for you.
No, start humping his leg in the interview. No. Anyway, no. I'm against dictatorship, and I don't want to send money to dictators. Does it bother you that your tax dollars go to a dictator?
No, because I don't see Zelensky as a dictator in the way that you do.
If your prime minister decided not to have another election,
Zelensky literally been leader for what? 2 years? 2 years, I think he'd been in charge. Putin, what's he into? Nearly 30 years now.
I think Putin has been in 24.
24?
I'm not defending Putin. I'm just saying, like, all dictatorship is bad. Like, a little dollop of dictatorship is as bad as a mouthful of dictatorship. I'm just against dictatorship. I'm for democracy. Inspiring, passionate, determined, and resolute. That's what you called Zelensky.
Oh, I thought you were on to me.
No, you were all of
I thought that was your. I thought that was your out for me.
Inspiring,
I was about to say thank you, Piers.
Determined, and resolute, and very handsome. Though that's implied.
I would agree with all of those things. I said.
You would.
Yes,
you would.
I think the courage, the moral courage he showed on the night that the Russians invaded, when people thought they would sweep through Kyiv and almost certainly kill him. The fact he immediately went on social media and with people around him and said, "I'm not leaving. I'm staying here for you." That's moral courage of the kind we saw with Trump when he stood there and got back up and went fight, fight,
when
fight.
He
I'm
assassinates
surprised
his
you don't admire
political
that.
opponents, or when he steals U.S. aid, or he allows his generals to sell half the missiles they get from the United States to the Mexican drug cartels and Iran and everyone else in the black market. Is that inspiring?
Well, you're making a
passionate,
lot of
determined?
allegations against
Those
him.
are facts. Those
Okay,
are-
you say they're facts, but other
They're
people
facts.
dispute them.
Who disputes that they're selling weapons in Ukraine on the black market? I don't think anyone disputes.
I'm sure that's happening.
Oh, it's happening.
Yeah.
Who disputes that Zelensky's murdered his political opponents? No one.
Has he? You think he personally has ordered the murders?
Well, he's in charge of the country. He's the
Do you
dictator.
think he has?
He's the dictator.
You just said he did.
Well, I mean, in the same sense that we would say...
You wouldn't dispute that Vladimir Putin does that relentlessly, that he imprisons and tortures and kills his
yeah,
political
no, I
opponents.
think there's a long history of that in the region, poisoning your enemies. Putin has done that. It seems clear to me. I'm not sending him money. I'm not calling him passionate, determined, resolute, and handsome.
But you haven't
I
actually.
hate this. I love this. This is
I don't
so
hate
good.
it.
So that is just pretty funny. I mean, there were a lot of complicated things brought up during this debate. There were a lot of things that we can take as food for thought. But if there's one thing that we can definitely take away from it, it's that Piers Morgan needs to rethink the way that he continually lambasts Putin for being a horrible dictator, as if that somehow proves that Putin is wrong in this conflict, whilst at the very same time he calls Zelensky brave and strong and masculine and handsome. This is just wrong. So guys, looking forward to reading your thoughts below. If you haven't liked the video, you can do so if you'd like to help me out. Subscribe to the channel, and if you'd like to watch another one, right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is RattlesnakeTV, keeping you armed and dangerous. Just a quick reminder, guys, if you have not liked the video and you would like to help a brother out, then feel free to do so. And if you're new here, or if you haven't subscribed yet for whatever reason, you're thinking, hey, this channel is not so bad, then you are more than welcome to join this bustling community. Back to the video.